The storm of January 1978 was a devastating one. I had the spray opposite the Time Ball Tower at the time and had thus far had a good season on herring and sprats. We were longlining on the night in question, having baited in and lowered the boat ready for launching. Slack tide was around 10 p.m. The tide was further out than usual and an eerie quiet sea was shining like a flat piece of glass, with the occasional swell breaking the silence. Dick, my crew, and I decided to wait a while longer before launching. Half an hour passed and heavy swells started to roll in. We hove up 2 lengths and waited and watched. There was a weird effect to the sea, and it was rising rapidly, and heavy swells were now rolling in more frequent. The launch was aborted and the spray was hove up tight to the wall, and by 11 p.m. the wind was blowing a storm force from the northwest and the seas were breaching the little sea wall. We tried raising some of the boatmen, but none were up, so Dick and I started pulling some of the boats onto the promenade. Alec Marshes were first, then Vin Allsops, but the storm was running at such a height it was becoming impossible to cope. One option was left, so I jumped in my car and shot out to my dad's farm in Albert Road, started his big Ford tractor and drove it as fast as possible up the beach. By now the sea had started running full force down the side streets. Dick, me and my dad started pulling many of the boats off the beach and across the road, and had pulled half of the Dill fleet to safety when Ben Bailey arrived on the scene at about 1 a.m. A couple of other boatmen arrived just after him, and the rest of the boats were hauled across the promenade to safety, except one, Hooley's. This was padlocked to his mooring chain and we couldn't break it free, but while trying to tow the boat free, the tractor with me on it was picked up by a huge swell and thrown into the lamppost whilst trying to save his boat, hence the picture of the bent lamppost. My boat, the Spray, was the last to be moved. Being so busy pulling other boats to safety, I forgot all about her, but before we could pull her to safety, a sea ran in, picked her up and threw her into the winch, knocking the winch over and damaging her port quarter. Early that morning, around 4 a.m, Jim from the Lobster Pot Cafe called us along. He opened the cafe and made us all hot tea and sandwiches. We were soaked and frozen. We sat in the cafe watching the sea breach the silly wall that had been built on the seafront. It came rushing over this wall, hit the houses and tried to return seaward but was stopped by the wall. Hence, it returned and ran down the high street, causing much flooding. The tractor required a split tyre and the Boatmen's Association paid for a replacement. If Dick and I had not been about that night, many boats would have been destroyed. The pictures of the floods were taken on my old Brownie Camera. They're not good, but I was lucky to have a camera in those days. The beach was cleared up over the next few weeks and the Spray was repaired. I eventually sold up over this and took up a fish round, serving the country villages for some 10 years, still fishing at Ramsgate on the trawler Bellina with Rusty Purvis at weekends, and many more adventures happened. I returned to the beach in the year 2000 and built the St David for my son Andrew. She was sold and went to Holland. I then built the St Rose in my garden, Ripple, eventually selling her to a fisherman in Fraserburgh.